Alligator Alley. Have you ever heard of it? Well, if you're not familiar with South Florida, you probably haven't heard of this road. It connects the East Coast side to the West Coast side of South Florida. Now, there's only one or two ways to get from the East Coast side to the West Coast side because it's covered in Everglades, swamps, and over 1 million alligators. Now, one thing about this road, Alligator Alley, that makes it different than any other road in the United States is every 20 miles across the trek from the East Coast side to the West Coast side, they make you do a checkpoint. Now, at this checkpoint, they make you wrestle 2 alligators. I've never heard of this before, but someone told me this, so I've been training for it. I've been training for the past couple weeks, and I also wrestled a lot when I was younger as well, so I feel pretty confident in my abilities to wrestle these alligators. Unfortunately, they told me that I would not be able to film the actual wrestling of the alligator, so you'll have to take my word for it. But the reason that we're going from the East Coast side to the West Coast side is because we're going to Tampa Hard Rock to play a $3,500 main event. There's a bunch of big names there: Rampage, Brad Owen, Andrew Nemi, a bunch of tournament crushers as well. There's probably going to be close to $1 million for first place, so we could be a millionaire in literally 4 or 5 days. That's one of the best things about tournament poker. But let's get over there. Let's wrestle some alligators. Let's hope we run good. Let's get down to the table. Let's get to the action. Let's go. Upon arriving to Tampa Hard Rock, I was informed that I would not be able to live video record at the tables, so I'll just give you guys some highlights from the $3,500 main event. I late regged into the level number 4 and started with 50,000 chips. I didn't really get anything going over the first 4 levels, and my stack dwindled all the way down to 17,000 chips, which is roughly around 14 big blinds. With only 13 big blinds left in level number 8, I got it all in with pocket aces versus pocket kings and got the full double up. A few hands later, I was all in again, pocket queens this time versus pocket eights, and we hit a set on that board to win a nice big pot. Our stack is now at 80,000. We went from 17,000 chips all the way up to 80,000 in about 10 minutes. We now made it to level number 10, the last level for day number 1. The blinds go up, and I'm left with about 60,000 chips for 30 big blinds. I get it all in, pocket jacks versus ace king for a massive pot. If I can hold here with pocket jacks, I'll have over a 130,000 chip stack, good for around 60 big blinds coming back in day number 2. Unfortunately, a king comes on the flop and we can't improve, and we are out of the main event. I head home later that night, and the next day I walk into the Hard Rock on the Hollywood side and sit down with the 5-10 game. I hope you guys are ready for an exciting session. I pick up so many big hands in this session here. First one, I have pocket kings. There's a raise to 35. I re-raise on the button to 115. My opponent makes the call, heads up. First flop back home here at Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. It comes out king 9-3, all diamonds, flopping top set in a 3-bet pot. He checks. I bet 125. He shows me ace queen of hearts and folds. Next hand, there's a hijack raise to $35. I'm on the button with pocket tens. The hijack player is a Euro pro. I can sometimes 3-bet here or sometimes call. Given the fact that I'm in position and there's some recreational players in the blinds, I like to just call. The big blind who calls is actually one of my friends who I used to play in Florida with. His name is Mike A, and he's recently been out playing on Hustler live stream. Huge games. We go 4 ways to a 7-7-6 board, 2 hearts. The action checks to me, and with an overpair on this board, I bet pretty big, $125. Small blind calls 125, and now Mike A puts in a raise. He makes it $525 with the action back over on me. I think against a lot of players here at the Hard Rock, this would just be a snapful because they would probably never be bluffing, but he's been playing a lot of big games in LA, a lot of games much bigger than this 5-10 game. It's definitely not out of the question he could be doing this with some straight draws, maybe some flush draws, possibly even a 6 just to kind of see where he's at. So I decided to call once in position and see what happens here on the turn. Small blind folds, and now we're heads up to another 6, which now double pairs the board. Mike A now continues for over a $600 bet, and I feel like now he just always has a 7 or a 6, and we're probably beat, so I make the fold, and he shows me 5-7 offsuit for a full house. This does happen sometimes when you flat a big hand in position. Sometimes players get in there with some mediocre hands and outflop you, and this time he got the best of me, winning a pretty big pot. In this hand, there's a $25 straddle under the gun, so the game is 5, 10, 25, and I have pocket jacks this time on the button. A little bit better than pocket tens. There's a raise to 75 in the hijack, a call, and I 3-bet to 325 bucks. Action folds back over to the hijack player, who's a pretty active young guy, and he decides now a 4-bet is incoming. He 4-bets me to $900. I started the hand with about $3,300 in my stack, and my opponent has about a $7,000 stack, so he completely covers me here. I do have a decent amount of history with this opponent, and he does play a lot of hands. I would say 30 to 40% of hands. He limps sometimes, he raises sometimes, and sometimes he'll throw in some 3-bets, but I hardly ever see him 4-bet, and if he does 4-bet, usually it's with a pretty strong hand. Now, unfortunately for us, pocket jacks are really not doing too good against usual 4-bet ranges of queens, kings, aces, and ace-king. At best, we're flipping here. I'm considering all my options now. I think I could call, try to set mine here, but if the flop comes out low and he bets, I'm really not going to know where I'm at. I could jam all in, but a 5-bet jam versus a player who really doesn't 4-bet that often does feel like somewhat of an overplay. I think folding is fine as well, and eventually I decided to go with that route. I fold pocket jacks here to my opponent's 4-bet, and he tells me he had ace-king, so we were flipping. The dealer puts out the flop because we do time flop here at the Hard Rock. Whoever's card comes out on the left on the flop has to pay for the entire table's rake. The first card that comes out is an ace, so if I would have called or went all in, we probably would have lost this one. I'm down about $1,000 now and look down in the big blind at pocket aces. It folds to me, I make it $75, and the straddle folds, and we get no action. This next hand is a fun one. The hijack player who 4-bet me earlier raises to 75. With pocket nines on the button, I elect to call. Big blind calls 75, and under the gun, straddler calls as well. 4 ways to king, king 6, 2 diamonds. We have a pair that's above the 6, and it is pretty hard to flop trips. So when the action checks to me, I do feel like we probably have the best hand here a lot of the time. So I throw out a bet of $125, basically as a protection bet against any overcards, and also we can get called by worse hands like a 6, pocket 7s, pocket 8s, and flush draws. Big blind folds, under the gun straddler calls 125, and the hijack folds as well. So now we're heads up, and I think to myself, how about a black 9 on the turn, and bink, we get it. It's the 9 of spades giving us a full house. What a beautiful sight, hitting a full house right on the turn. My opponent checks with about $1,300 left in his stack. I don't want to bet too big now to let him fold his flush draws or even his 6x, pocket 7s, or pocket 8s. So I continue for a $280 bet, and to my surprise, he puts in a check raise. He re-raises me to $650. What a beautiful sight. We turn a full house, and now my opponent is check raising me. He only has $500 left. If we were deeper stacked, I would probably just call, but I feel like he's just always going to go with his hand, and I don't want a scare card to come out on the river to kill my action, so I decided to go all in. The way he's played this hand, I'm almost positive he has trips here. He doesn't snap call right away, which means we're definitely good, but eventually he does put in the chips. I'm praying that if he does have a king, he doesn't make a bigger full house on the river. I've been running so bad these last couple months. Let me hold on in this one. The pot is pretty massive now, almost $3,000 in the middle, and we see another 9 on the river, giving us quads, which is definitely going to be winning this one. Pretty sick run out there, going runner, runner, full house, and quads on the river to take down a pretty massive pot here at the Hard Rock. That was a pretty sick hand. I'm not sure if I ever turned a set and then rivered quads before, and to win a massive pot as well. I'm pretty sure we coolered him there. He probably had a king. Maybe he just had a combo straight draw and flush draw, but either way, the chips are being pushed in our direction, and now we're up a little over $1,000 on the day. I told you guys in the beginning of this video that this one is full of action. I get so many big pocket pairs in this session. It's just insane. Next up here, I have another big pocket pair, pocket kings this time. There's a raise to 125. I 3-bet to $325. My opponent calls. Flop comes out queen high, seems safe for us. I bet small and he folds. We've had tens, jacks, kings, and now pocket aces. In the straddle, it folds all the way to the small blind. I'm praying I get action this time, and we do. He raises to $75. I 3-bet to $250. We're around $4,000 deep. This is the same guy who put in the 4-bet earlier with ace-king. Like I said, he likes to play a lot of hands. He likes to get in there. He is definitely an action player. He contemplates his options for a little bit of time, and eventually he calls $250 now. So $500+ in the middle. We're going heads up in a 3-bet pot. Queen 8 for rainbow, a great flop for us. Really, we're only beat now if he has pocket queens, pocket 8s, and pocket 4s. When he checks over to me, I decide to get a little bit funky here and trap and check this one back. My reasoning here is that this guy loves to bluff if he senses weakness. If he thinks that I'm weak here, or if a board runs out that's going to favor his range more than my 3-bet range, sometimes he will just blast off. So I decided to check back this flop for deception and also to maybe induce him to bluff on later streets. The turn card's the king of spades and he checks for a second time. Now I decide to bet $200 and the action's back over on the small blind. And instead of calling $200, he decides to check raise. We're facing a lot of check raises this session. He makes it $650. Well, maybe we gave him a little bit of bait and it's possible he could be blasting off here, but what has me a little bit concerned is that this king is just really good for my 3-betting range after I check back the flop, so I'm kind of surprised that he's check raising here on a card that is so good for me. This makes me think that he is leaning more towards having value. If the turn card was like a 5, a 7, a 6, a 3, all those cards I think he could bluff on, but a king just doesn't really feel like he's going to be bluffing that often. But after I check back the flop and underrep my hand, there's no way I can fold my hand. I think re-raising would be an overplay with just a single pair. So my only option is to call, and that is what I do. Going here to the river in a big pot, and we see another queen pairing the board. Small blind thinks for about 7 seconds and throws out a $1,100 bet on this river. Man, whew, this pot got pretty big. We only have one pair and we're facing a large bet after my opponent check raised on the turn. However, this river card is pretty good for us. It reduces the likelihood that he has pocket queens for quads because there's 2 on the board. It could counterfeit him if he had a hand like king 8 or king 4. We're now beating that hand. So without thinking for too long, I just flick in the chip for a call, and he shows pocket 7s for 4th pair, turning that hand into a bluff. We show the pocket aces and they're good. This hand basically went exactly how I was hoping. I trapped and checked back the flop, and it induced him to bluff with pocket 7s, and we win a pretty big one here, which is nice because over the last 2 months, I just have not been running good with aces. I've lost some massive pots over the last couple months with aces, so it feels good to win this one. Our stack is now close to $7,000, doing pretty good, up about 2K on the day. I've been playing a lot of online poker lately, and if you guys can't get to the tables or you just don't have the time or the money to play 1-2 or 2-5, come check out the Poker Bros streets with me. You can play all sorts of small stakes, 10 cent, 20 cent, 20 cent, 40 cent, 30 cent, 60 cents, all the way up to 5-10 no limit. I put in a lot of hours on this app every single week. If you guys want to play online poker with me, follow the directions in the description below. It'll take you to a Telegram app where you can talk to my agent. He'll help you put in some money into your account. It's very fast, very safe and efficient as well. It's a lot of fun. I hope to see you guys out there in the streets. Okay, so this entire video so far has been 14 minutes long, and every single hand I played is a big pocket pair, and that's going to come to a stop here with Queen Jack offsuit. There's an early position raise to 60, and I decide to 3-bet to 175, hoping to go heads up here in position, but that doesn't happen. My friend Mike A calls on the button, the big blind calls, and the initial raiser calls as well. 4 ways in a 3-bet pot, lots of action on this table. And the flop comes out Jack 8-9, 2 spades. We have top pair, 1 overcard, and a gut shot straight draw. Top pair multi-way in a 3-bet pot is pretty good, but on this board, I'm not really liking it too much. There's so many hands that I could be losing to. It's a super wet and connected board. There's a lot of 2 pairs, straights, and sets that my opponents could be playing that could smash this flop. And surprisingly to me, the early position raiser who raised to $60 now leads into me for $200. Very weird. I really have no idea what he's doing here. I'm not sure if he's leading out hoping that I will raise, or I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time here he's just going to have a top pair holding, maybe a flush draw that he's trying to set his own price. I decided to just call because I still have 2 more players left to act, and like I said, the board is very, very connected as well. The button folds, but the big blind makes the call. Turn card pairs the 8, and honestly, it's probably not too bad of a card. It doesn't bring in any straights or any flushes, but now the big blind just decides to go all in for $510. If the early position raiser who led out into me on the flop calls this bet, I'll probably just be folding. If he raises, I will definitely be folding, but eventually the early position player folds. So with the action back over on me, in a massive pot with top pair facing a $500 bet, I don't think we can let go of our hand now, so I decided to just put in a call. The pot is over $1,800. It's only $500 for me to call. We have a top pair holding a 3-bet pot. I just don't think I can fold for this sizing, and we're heads up now to the last card, which is the deuce of spades. Brings in that front door flush, and my opponent shows king jack of hearts for top pair king kicker, which is going to beat our top pair queen kicker. He's got us out kicked by 1, and we lose a pretty big one here. As Doug Polk says, sometimes in poker, it's just your time to die, and top pair versus top pair, slightly better kicker in a 3-bet pot facing a small bet according to the size of the pot. I just don't think we can ever fold our queen jack there. We don't really like it, but he could be doing it with a variety of hands, weaker jacks, flush draws, straight draws, all sorts of hands like that. So I feel like we just got to call and lose, which unfortunately is what happens, leading in to the last hand of the night. My friend on my right, the guy who tried to bluff me there with pocket 7s when I had pocket aces, he limps for $25. I have the queen deuce suited in the cutoff. Shout out to Israeli Ron, who plays in LA. I decided to get a little funky here and raise this one up to $100. Mike A on the button, who's also an LA guy, makes the call. Middle position player makes the call, so we're 3 ways with a premium-ish hand. Queen deuce suited, and the flop comes out ace 7-3, 2 hearts. We completely miss, but when middle position player checks to me, I do feel like we have a range advantage on this board. We can have aces, we can have ace king, and ace queen, so I bet out 1/3 size of the pot, $100. Mike A on the button makes the call, and the middle position player makes the fold. We're heads up, and the turn card is a king. Now, a lot of the time, basically every single time, I should just always be giving up on this turn card, but there's a couple of things that are going through my head. One is that Mike A and I haven't played together in over 3 years. The last time we played together, it was at 2-5 at Magic Shitty Casino in Miami, Florida. And when I played 3 years ago, I was pretty damn tight. I only had probably $10,000 to my name, and I really never got out of line. So in his mind, his image for me is probably a tighter player who hardly ever bluffs, which is still somewhat of the truth now 3 years later. Also, this king is better for my range as well. Like I said before, I can have ace king, and he really cannot. I feel like if I bet here big, I'm just going to get him to fold everything here except for an ace and a flush draw. So I continue here with a bluff. I make it $500. When I bet $100 on this flop, I feel like he's going to float me here sometimes. He's going to call me with all of his pocket pairs, all of his 7x, his 3x, his straight draws, gut shots, all those hands like that. And this $500 bet will just get all those hands to fold. Also, this entire session, I've just been showing down really strong hands. I've got aces, I've showed kings, I hit quads. I really haven't gotten out of line this entire night. So I feel like my image here should pay off. Unfortunately, he does put in a call for $500, and we're going here to the river, which pairs the board. It's a 7. When Mike A calls the flop and then calls the turn, I put him on a flush draw, maybe a king x of hearts hand, and an ace. Now, if I bet this river, he's probably going to fold his king x of hearts, he'll fold his busted flush draws, and his busted straight draws, but if he has an ace, I feel like he will call a lot of the time. However, the way I've been playing, and the way he perceives me, is somewhat of a tight player who probably wouldn't triple off as a bluff. If I bet this river card with a pretty big sizing, I'm representing hands like ace-king, pocket kings, pocket aces, quad sevens, ace-7, pocket threes. All these hands are super strong. If I did have a hand like ace-jack or ace-10, I may even check this river card, just trying to get to showdown. So if I continue big here, maybe I can put him in a tough spot with an ace, thinking that I have a better hand than him. So I decided to go for it. A triple barrel bluff incoming here with queen high. I throw out $875. This is a pretty damn big bet for this game. Almost 100 big blinds going in here on the river. I am hoping maybe he'll hero fold his hand, put me on a better hand than him, but that doesn't happen. He snap calls my $875. I show the queen high and he shows ace jack offsuit, and we just punted a big one here right to Mike A. Well, that sucked. Not how I was wanting that one to go. We get snapped off on the river and we lose a pretty big one. My stack is now about $4,000, so I've lost about $3,000 from my peak. I'm pretty tired. I just drove from Tampa and back the day before, so I end up calling it a night. All right, that is it for this one. A super swingy session today, to be honest. I was down probably like $2,000 right off the bat. Really couldn't win a hand, and then picking up some big hands, aces, kings, pocket jacks, pocket nines, turning a full house, rivering quads in an all-in pot. Then we caught a big punt from my opponent with pocket sevens when we had aces, and we trapped, checking back the flop. I think I had a $7,000 stack at my high point, but then I lost with queen jack versus king jack in a 3-bet pot. I lost a couple other small to medium-sized pots, and then the last hand of the night, punting it off there with queen deuce suited, like a 50-yard punt right, it was just, I don't know. I don't even know what I was doing, honestly. That was a really bad play. Even though that bluff didn't work, the game was insanely good. We were playing 5, 10, 25 basically the entire night. There was super deep stacks and a bunch of random people that I've never seen before, and I would attribute that to the holiday weekend. Honestly, when I got here today, it was so busy. I'm like, why is there so many people here on a Sunday? I didn't even realize that it was Labor Day weekend. That just shows how like out of touch and off the grid I am, that I just make my own schedule and I work whenever I want. I take holidays and vacations whenever I want. So like I didn't even know it was a vacation holiday weekend. I'm like, man, it's freaking crowded here today. Turns out nobody has to work tomorrow. But anyway, it was a swingy session, up and down. Not really happy with the way I played that last hand, but sometimes you got to punt it off. That's how poker works. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. A little snippet into the Tampa main event, and then a 5, 10, 25 session here at Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. That is it for this one. Until next time, I'll see you.